In this tutorial, we will be applying the evaluation criteria to a book resource. Now, if you recall, our topic is religion in communist China. So I'm going to go ahead and use those keywords that we used in the periodical example. So I'm going to do religion in China and communism or communist with the truncation mark at the end of communist and search. And here are my results. We have quite a few results here. Let's find one that looks good. Most of them look good, but for this example, let's just take a look at this one. World Christianity and Marxism. So I'm going to pull this record up, and here we are in the item record. Now the first evaluation criteria we want to talk about is availability. And as you can see, this book is in fact available from the Beers library. So we know that we'll be able to get it if we reserve it. Now availability is very important for book resources because you need to be able to actually access the book in order to use it for your research. What you want to make sure that you do is give yourself enough time at the beginning of your research to request items and have them be brought in. You don't want it to be 3 days before your research before you start requesting books because you probably will not get them in on time. So you want to give yourself enough time to have them be brought in so you can read them and use them for your research. This is especially important if the book is not available here at Wayne. And this book is not. It's available at Beers. So we would have to request it. And if it wasn't available at Akron at all, we would have to go into OhioLink and do the same thing. So this is the kind of example of a book we would want to request at the beginning of the research, not at the end. Luckily, this book is in fact available. It is not checked out, so we wouldn't have to wait either. So we would probably want to request it right away so we can get it, so we can get started on our research faster. Our next evaluation criteria is authority and credibility. Is the author an authority on the topic? Is the publisher a credible institution? Well, let's take a look. The first thing that should jump out at you is the publisher. It is Oxford University Press, and it is a university press from a distinguished university, so we can be pretty certain that they are a reliable institution. But is the author an authority on the topic? Well, we know the author's name, Dennis R. Jantz. So why don't we try to find if we can look up any information on him. So let's go ahead and click on the book cover here to go into the Content Cafe. And as you can see, the Content Cafe lists author notes. So let's go into that. And as you can see, it says that Dennis R. Jantz is currently Professor of the History of Christianity at Loyola University, New Orleans. So we could be pretty certain that he is an authority on the topic. But let's just assume this wasn't available. How will we find out? Well, first let's go back to the item record. And let's go ahead and open up a new tab. And let's search for him. Dennis R. Jantz. And this first result looks good. Let's go ahead and go into it. And as you can see, it lists Dennis R. Jantz as a professor of the history of Christianity, which is related to the book we're looking at. So we can be pretty certain that this guy is in fact the author of the book. It isn't 100% clear, but we can be pretty certain because his specialization is related to the book and his name is exactly the same. If we wanted to be more certain, we would probably want to take a look at his CV down here. But for right now, let's just assume that he is in fact the author of the book. So let's go ahead and go back into the item record. Now, we know that the author is an authority on the topic and the publisher is a credible institution, so the authority and credibility side of this book checks out. So let's go on to the next evaluation criteria, purpose and bias. So when we are evaluating purpose and bias, the first question we want to ask is, who is the targeted audience? Who is this book written for? The first place we can look is more details to see if we can get any information from there. And as you can see, it lists a table of contents, but that doesn't really tell us a lot. So why don't we go back into the Content Cafe to see if we can find something. And as you can see, there's a summary available. So why don't we go into it? And I'm not going to read the summary, but if you take a look at it, you can see that the book is about the history of the relationship between Marxism and Christianity, using real-world examples with countries across the world. The tone is very neutral, and it doesn't appear to be arguing one way or another. We can guess by the tone and the language that this is an academic text due to like the neutral academic tone and language. So we can guess that the audience is probably college students, professors, people like that. Another place to look, if we go back, is the reviews. And it looks like there's a review listed, so let's go into it. And as you can see, this review actually mentions who the good audience is. It lists general readers, undergraduates, graduate students, professionals, and practitioners. So we can guess that this is probably an academic text. So when we go back into the item record, and now we have a good idea of who the audience is. So we can guess that the purpose of this book is to inform, since the audience is mainly for academics, students, professors, professionals, people like that. It isn't to entertain, and while the summary did mention argue, it is possible to have a book that argues for a point while still not pushing a specific agenda, which would be the case for a biased source. Now we haven't taken a look at bias yet, but we would still do the same thing. We will take a look at the summary to see if that would give us an idea, and we would take a look at the reviews. However, both of those might not be available, especially if there's no Content Cafe available. So how else would you tell? Well, you could take a look at the book's text. You could see if you could pull up an example on Google Books or Amazon if either of them are available. So let's take a look at an example to see if this book is available in Amazon. So I'm going to open a new tab and type in the title of the book, which is World Christianity and Marxism. And as you can see, Amazon is listed as the first result, and they let you look inside. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and it allows you to go into the text and take a look at some of the pages. This will not be the same as being able to actually read the text, but you should at least be able to take a look at some of the pages and get a feel for the language. Now this would be a good alternative if you didn't have access to reviews. This would be a good way to check for bias. So I'm going to close out of here and go back into the item record. When we are evaluating a resource for bias, we want to take a look at the tone and the language used, especially in the case of books, because we don't have the aid of images like we do with periodicals. We want to see if the author is keeping a neutral tone and that the author is using neutral language. Does the author keep a neutral tone? Does the author use neutral language? Does the author stay neutral on the topic? Or does the author take sides? Does the author try to get the reader to take sides, to feel a certain way, to act a certain way about the issue? Now recall, there is a difference between an author making an argument and pushing an agenda. An author making an argument is presenting a new viewpoint, often using facts to back it up, and isn't trying to get the reader to take action or to take sides. However, when an author is pushing an agenda, they are trying to get the reader to take sides, usually the author's side. So there is a difference. Now, if we wanted to be 100% certain that this book was biased or unbiased, we would have to take a look at the text. Look for the neutral language, make sure that the author is staying neutral on the topic and isn't trying to get the reader to act or feel a certain way. You would also want to take a look to see if you can find any information on the author to see if they have any sort of background related to the issue. This concludes this portion of the tutorial. In the next portion, we will begin with accuracy and reliability.